Tommy Jaggi here of Fansided, joined by NFL expert Marcus Mosher on the No Huddle Show on Stacking the Box. Marcus and I were off last week because of Memorial Day. The week before that, though, Marcus and I broke down all the projected win totals in the AFC this year. We gave our thoughts, talked about the teams that might be overrated, underrated. We're going to do the same again today, but for the NFC. So if you're a fan of an NFC team, stick around for this. Marcus, let's start things off right with the NFC South, which is a pretty crappy division overall. If you look at the outlook this year, not a lot of things to get excited about in terms of what to be encouraged by, but we're going to go kind of reverse order in terms of wins right now. We're going to start with the teams at the bottom of the list, work our way up to the top, and the ceiling for this division feels really low.
It does. I would be shocked if we had not only a Super Bowl winner from this division, but a team that's in the championship round. Like, it's just not a very good division, top to bottom. I think this has the lowest projected win total of the 8 divisions. But I do think there's could be a couple teams in here that are at least somewhat fun to watch. So let's get into it.
All right, definitely a couple of young quarterbacks to keep an eye on. We're going to start with one here, the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young, projected 6.5 wins this year. Now, Marcus, you're a big fan of Bryce and his turnaround that he had like the last 8 weeks of the 2024 season. He was admittedly good, but is the Panthers team good? Can he keep it up? Like, I think a lot of people are projecting this to be one of the worst overall teams in the league again this season. 6.5. Where do you draw the line there? Are you over or under that?
I'm probably slightly over. Like, I think this is a 7-ish win team. I think the offense is going to be much better now that they actually have a number one receiver in Tetsuo McMillan. The offensive line should be way better, but that defense has some major question marks. And as well as Bryce Young played down the stretch, I just don't see them being able to win a bunch of these shootout games. So I would go slightly over, but this isn't a playoff team yet.
Yeah, I'm on the fence with this one too, because it depends on which Bryce shows up, right? If it's the one we saw in the second half of the year, then I agree with you. I would go slightly over that, maybe 7, 8 wins. I think is still stretching it considering the roster talent. If it's the one who got benched before that, it's like, all right, this team could be the worst team in the league. And so you understand why Vegas makes money in doing what they do. I think 6.5 is probably where I would have set the line as well. It's hard to believe a team like the Panthers, though, Marcus, where with as many high draft picks as they have, as little like building block cornerstone foundational pieces are on the roster right now.
Well, they gave up quite a few to get Bryce Young, so that obviously set them back. But they've just had a bunch of injuries. Like 2 of their top players last year, Derek Brown, J.C. Horn, first-round picks, high first-round picks, missed most of the season with injuries. So they need those guys to get back being the stars that they are. J.C. Horn got a massive contract over the offseason. But you're right, like the middle part of this roster in terms of talent needs to get a lot better. And I think they're hoping now that all the assets for the Bryce Young trade are paid out, now they can start building the team that they were hoping to when they acquired Bryce Young.
Yeah, and at some point, the young guys are going to have to elevate the overall performance of the roster. We'll see if that happens this year, but 6.5 wins is the projected win total for Carolina. We have 2 teams tied here for third in the division this year, and we'll start with the New Orleans Saints, Marcus. This team kind of has hit rock bottom. They did financially over the past couple of seasons. Derek Carr recently retired kind of unexpectedly with that shoulder injury, and now we're looking at an offense that could be run by a rookie quarterback and Tyler Shuck, who turns 26, by the way, early in the season. Like, how do you feel about this Kellen Moore run team this year? It's going to be a completely new New Orleans Saints, but is it a good one?
This is the one I struggle with the most. And honestly, it's because I don't understand this 7.5. I get the defense should be really good. They've got a bunch of talent on defense, a bunch of first-round picks. It's a veteran unit. They should be good on that side of the ball. But Tyler Shuck, I know he's older, but he has not played a ton. Like, he still needs a lot of development. The offensive line is better, but the lack of pass catching options outside of Chris Olave scares me a little bit. I think the Saints have a chance to be maybe the worst team in the league, so I'm going way under 7.5 wins here.
Yeah, Marcus, old and polished is okay. Young and raw is okay. When you're old and raw, that's a bad combination. You got to hope that Shuck comes out of the gate swinging. I would go under here as well. I'm not buying them as a 7.5 win team. I just don't think that they have the star power on the roster for it. I certainly don't think that their quarterback play. You could argue, Marcus, that their quarterback play is the worst in the NFL. And I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. The Steelers are right down there. The Steelers are right down there if they don't get Aaron Rodgers with Mason Rudolph. But at least Rudolph has a lot of NFL experience. Shuck has none. And we don't know how he's going to look starting off with a team that has, quite frankly, no weapons to throw to, it seems like, barring Olave's health. We'll see how he does this year. Scary concussion history. Under. Like, I'm going under here. I think that that's the safest bet for the New Orleans Saints. I can see this team being like a 3-4 win football team. Can you see them being that bad?
Yeah, I mean, I could. Their schedule's pretty soft, and that's the only thing that makes me a little bit hesitant to say they're going to only win 3 or 4 games, because there are quite a few games where the spread's within 3 points. So they're just toss-up games. It's a new coaching staff. Maybe Kellen Moore gets these guys excited. But on paper, you're right. This feels like a 3 or 4 win team.
So let's move to the next team, Marcus, that also is projected 7.5 wins in the NFC South, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I'm much more encouraged by the overall outlook of Atlanta right now, and I think respectably so. Like Michael Penix, we saw what he looked like in the last several games of the season. He definitely showed some flashes there. An older quarterback to begin with, but definitely has the traits, the arm talent. They've got a number 1 receiver in Drake May. They have more pieces assembled already and more young talent to look forward to than what a team like the Saints does. Is it fair to have them with the same projected win total in, like we said, maybe the most underwhelming division in the league, at least the almost underwhelming division in the NFC?
This is one of my favorite bets, the over here for Atlanta. I don't know if they're going to win the division because I think Tampa Bay is a more well-rounded team. But if you look on the offensive side of things for Atlanta, this is one of the best offensive lines in the league. They've got one of the best tackle combos in Jake Matthews and Caleb McGarry. Chris Lindstrom might be the best guard in football. And then you've got weapons. You've got Drake London, who had a 1,300-yard season last year. Darnell Mooney is one of the better number 2 receivers in the league, and we saw that play out last year. We'll see if they get anything from Kyle Pitts. Bijan is obviously special. I love this offense. My only concern here is the pass rush. Their pass rush is awful. And you see why they made the trade up to go get James Pierce to prepare him with Jalen Walker, because they had nothing on the defensive line last year. If they can even be slightly below average on defense, I think they win 9, 10, maybe even 11 games. But yeah, I'm smashing the over 7.5 here.
100%. I agree with you there. I think that this win total is off in my mind. And Marcus, we criticized the decision to trade next year's first-round pick to go back up in the draft and get James Pierce, but they're making an effort to make their biggest weakness into a strength all of a sudden. If they can do that, they're going to be sitting pretty here because they've got pieces in place. They have that offensive line. Mooney might be one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league right now. And so I like the over as well. I can see them being a 9, maybe 10 win team considering their strength of schedule, the division that they're playing in. And that brings us to the number 1 projected team in the NFC South. And it's not hard to understand why. You've got the most polished quarterback of the group. You've got a team that's been there in recent years, one with even a playoff win over the Eagles 2 years ago. And that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. 9.5 wins. Are you content with that over under?
Yeah, that's about right to me. I wouldn't go way over that because Baker still has these games that just drive you absolutely nuts. He had several of them down the stretch last season where he was the reason why they lost. But they did add more weapons. Mike Evans is healthy now. They added Emeka Egbuka. We'll see when Chris Godwin comes back. Kate Otten really turned into be a nice player last year. Jalen McMillan is going to be like the wide receiver 4 for this team. So they've got weapons. They've got a good offensive line. It's how well does the secondary play? I think last year that group took a major step back, and we saw them just get torched in the secondary. I think 9.5 wins is about right. I think if I had to pick, I think I would say probably over. I think they get to 10-7, but no more than that.
Yeah, Mike Evans is the ageless wonder out there. And so you add another receiver to the mix of already a strong, they were kind of aging out a little bit. And so I think that gives them a boost of youth there. Marcus, if you were to bet the field against Tampa Bay, like what would you go there for to win this division?
I think Atlanta and Tampa are very, very close. And what's funny is I think they're
Okay.
just so similar to each other, where they're both teams that just want to win shootout games and they're relying on their defense to
Mhm.
just make a couple plays. I would say Tampa should be the favorite, but Tampa and Atlanta are just so clearly better than the other two teams in the division. I have a hard time seeing anybody else take the NFC South.
I agree. It's going to be one of those two teams, barring something miraculous here. Let's move on to the NFC West, and we'll start at the bottom of the list here. And again, a kind of tightly compacted list that can go either way, which we saw last year. Like that division was constantly flip flopping each other. Let's start with two teams that are tied for the bottom with 8.5 wins, and so a respectable floor, I would say. But let's go with the Arizona Cardinals here first, Marcus. 8.5. Kyler Murray, that offense, like, are they going to take the next step? Like a few years ago, we saw the Cardinals offense and what it could be, and they've never really progressed since then. Like, do you think that they get over the hump this time around?
I do. I think Arizona got really. I think they got a lot better this offseason. They went out and paid big money for Josh Sweat to get a viable defensive end. They went out and paid Dalvin Tomlinson to get better up front. Their first round pick was Walter Nolan, and now you pair Walter Nolan with Dalvin Tomlinson, and you've got a legit defensive tackle room. Zaven Collins made the switch to edge rusher last year and was phenomenal. They grabbed Will Johnson in the second round. You're hoping Marvin Harrison Jr. can take that year two leap. This was already a pretty good team last year. They had a bunch of injuries. To go to 9-8, I don't think is a big stretch for them at all. Plus, that schedule is so soft. I think they could be a 7-win team, but the schedule boosts them up to 9-8, 10-7. So yes, I like the over here.
Yeah, I would hit the over as well. And I think it's almost impossible to envision a situation where their defense is worse than it was a year ago. Like that by default, just looking at the talent that they've added on that roster, defense should improve. I don't see the offense really taking a step back. In fact, it should take a step forward. Year two now with Marvin Harrison, that connection with Kyler. We'll see how that goes. But I would go over, albeit not highly over that, maybe a 9 to 10 win football team. But again, this division is so close. And so let's go to the next team that's also projected 8.5. That is the Seattle Seahawks. New quarterback situation now. You're moving on from Geno. You're getting Sam Darnold, who had a fantastic statistical season last year for the Vikings. Can he replicate some of that success not being in that same system anymore? Or is he going to look more like the Sam Darnold of old? Because I think that is going to be the determining factor of how Seattle does this year.
Now, luckily for Sam Darnold, he's got Clint Kubiak as his new offensive coordinator. They were together in San Francisco for a year. So at least this isn't a totally new offense for him.
Sure.
But the problem is that interior offensive line is probably the worst in football. They drafted Gray Zabel in round 1. I think interior offensive linemen sometimes take some time to get up to the speed of the NFL. And you just don't have DK Metcalf on this roster anymore, stretching the field. It's a very, very slow offense with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I love, but Cooper Kupp, who I thought was pretty done last year. If I had to pick a team to finish at the bottom of the NFC West, it's the Seahawks. I like the direction they're trending. I like the way they're building this team. They're just not ready yet.
I think that's fair. And they've had some significant roster turnover that can't be ignored. When you have got no Geno Smith anymore, no DK, no Tyler Lockett. Those were some of the biggest factors on the team over the past several years. Now we're going to look at a completely new offense. How are they going to do with Cooper Kupp? How are they going to do in their current situation that they have right now? And are you buying the Sam Darnold? Like, we've got one good year of Sam Darnold over the course of his career. Is that the player that he is right now? If it's not, if he reverts back even a little bit, can this team be competitive? But I agree with you. I would bet them to be the bottom team in that division this year. Let's go to the Los Angeles Rams at 10.5 wins here. The division winner from last year, still have Matt Stafford, can still play football at a high level. A lot of this, I feel like really what's come down to for LA is like they've had to have their offensive skill players be healthy. Can Puka Nacua stay healthy throughout the season? If so, they're probably going to have a pretty good offense once again. Defense really came alive. You've got some young talent on that defense that you can build around. Can they take another step forward? How do you see the Rams playing out? And would you go over under that 10.5?
On paper, this is the best team in the NFC West. They just don't have a lot of holes on their entire team. I mean, their offensive line really got better in the second half of last year. I think the addition of Devontae Adams, like I thought Adams was really good last year with the Jets. I think he's going to be fantastic as a number
Mhm.
2 receiver in Sean McVay's offense. The problem that I have with this team is they are relying on a lot of older players like Devontae Adams, like Matt Stafford. Their number 1 receiver, Puka Nacua, has struggled to stay healthy throughout his entire
Yeah.
football career. So I think 10.5 wins is probably right. I think they probably get to 11. Uh, but I actually like another team in the NFC West a little bit better this season.
Yeah, if this team gets into the playoffs like they've snuck in, they are threatening because of that lethal wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 combination with Matt Stafford, who always knows how to get his best players involved. And so I think they're a sneaky candidate this year. That's probably where I would have set the win total for them. But I agree with you. There's one more this year, a team that did not perform well as a 6-win team last year, and that is the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy got that massive contract, was $53.5 million per season, new money average this year. They were riddled with injuries last season. They've had some roster turnover. Can they return to the team that we saw 2 years ago? It's like, this is the best roster in the NFL type stuff.
I think so. They were the number 1 most injured team last year, according to Warren Sharp's WAR. It's unbelievable how many injuries they had. You name a star player on their team, he was injured. I like what they did in the draft. They just addressed defense. They threw a bunch of picks into their defensive line. They added Bryce Huff this week, who had a lot of success under Robert Saleh when he was with the Jets. So I think that's going to help the pass rush. And then, Tommy, I know I don't want to get too schedule heavy here, but they are favored in 14 of their 17 games this season. 14 of the 17 games. So even if they just play at the level that we think they're capable of playing of, they're going to win a bunch of these games. So I'm picking them to win the NFC West. They might not be the best team on paper, but because they're playing a 4th place schedule, I think they've had a really good chance to get to double-digit wins and maybe even be the number 1 or number 2 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, the 4th place schedule, you are still a Kyle Shanahan-led team. You still got talent all around your roster. Would it surprise anybody if they were a 12 or 13-win team this year? I don't think so. I think that they could make that resurgence. And we've seen that from this 49ers team in the past where they've had a bad year. They've jumped right back on top again. And so I think that they could do it again in 2025. That is your outlook there. I would hit the over for the 49ers here. I think that they are probably going to end up in the 11 to 12 win range with the potential to be even higher because of the schedule that you pointed out here. Let's move on, Marcus, to the NFC East this year. The Commanders came out of nowhere last year. You're obviously Cowboys fans, so this one's going to be intriguing. But let's start at the bottom of the list with the clear and obvious no contest 4th in this division. Like I would be floored. Like, this is the easiest 4th place finisher to predict out of maybe any division in the NFL this year. The New York Giants, 5.5 wins.
Let's look at their first 6 games to start the year. At Commanders, at Cowboys. So back-to-back road games to start the season. First game at home Chiefs, Sunday Night Football, home Chargers. Then they play home Eagles, at Broncos, at Eagles, and then home against the 49ers. It doesn't get any easier, Tommy. Then they play the Bears, the Giants, or Bears, Packers, Lions, Cowboys, Vikings. Like, this is a team that probably has the worst scheduled luck of any team in the NFL. You're going to have a new starting quarterback, probably Russell Wilson. They open the year. The offensive line is in flux. I think the defense could be really, really good after drafting Abdul Carter. It's just that I think this team could get off to like a 1-6, 1-7 start. And if that happens, you probably have a coaching change that's happening midseason. You're probably playing Jackson Dart, a rookie quarterback who needs to sit. I would go under here.
Yeah, this is the perfect storm against an already bad football team that I don't expect to make leaps and bounds improvements this season. They traded back into the first round to get Jackson Dart. Russell Wilson was not good last year. Steelers offense averaged 14 points a game over the final 5 games of the season. They completely crumbled, including the playoffs there. They're not good. And I think that the Giants have a real chance to have the worst record in the NFL this year, especially when you consider that strength of schedule. So easily I would go under the 5.5 this year. I don't know if they're going to be a very competitive football team.
I think the
And
defense will keep them competitive. When you have Burns, Dexter
they will keep
Lawrence,
them
Abdul
in
Carter.
games. Do you trust the offense though to score points?
No.
That's the problem.
That's why honestly, their best path to winning games is probably having Jameis Winston and just trying to get into a bunch of these shootouts, because I do think their pass rush could win them that way. But if it's Russell Wilson, no chance.
And they kind of feel, Marcus, to me, kind of like how the Patriots have been for a couple of years now, right? Where their defense is respectable enough. They should be able to stay competitive, but their offense is just so bad that they can't keep up with anybody, really. And that's how I think the Giants are going to end up being ultimately this year. We'll see if Russell Wilson can give them that boost. He hasn't given anybody a boost, really, since he's been in Seattle. So I wouldn't bank on it right now, but 5.5 wins for Giants. We're both going under here. That brings us to the next team, which is the Dallas Cowboys. And I didn't think that we would be saying this if we had talked about this a year ago, but obviously we saw the incredible resurgence of the Washington Commanders. What's the quarterback did? Why am I trying? Jaden
Daniels.
Jaden Daniels. The name was escaping me for a second.
Yeah, good.
Incredible season, offensive rookie of the year, and deservingly so. It's going to be tough for Cowboys to hang, I feel like, now, because those top two teams are so good. I wouldn't put it past Dallas to be the second in this division, but it's going to take a healthy Dak Prescott. 8.5 wins, Marcus. If Dak is healthy, I'm still going over that, even with Cowboys' strength of schedule and all. I just have a hard time believing that Dak is going to get 8 or fewer wins this year if he can play 17 games.
Yeah, so the thing for the Cowboys is they actually had a lot of success against Jaden Daniels last year. They beat him in Washington. And in the final game of the year, they were beating Washington so handedly that the Commanders actually pulled Daniels out of that game because they didn't want to get him hurt as they were fighting for playoff seeding. Dak has a record of 33-8 in the NFC East. So when he's healthy, he does really well in the division. But there's some major concerns with this team. Terrence Steele is the second oldest player on offense for the Cowboys. He's 27. It's a very, very young offense that I still think needs to gel, especially on the offensive line. And then on defense, 2 of your top 3 players, Trayvon Diggs, DeMarvion Overshown, coming off major, major knee injuries. Overshown won't be back until Thanksgiving at the earliest. Diggs probably not till Halloween. So this is a team that is going to have to survive with a tough schedule early on without some key playmakers. I think 9 wins is probably where I would project them, but not much more than that.
Yeah, give me the Cowboys at 10, maybe 11 wins. When you've got Dak Prescott, who you look at the talent at quarterback, I'm not joking. Like he's still one of the better quarterbacks, especially regular season quarterbacks. That's what we're talking about here anyway. In the NFC, you pair that with one of the best pass rush units led by Micah Parsons. Dallas's pass rush is going to be good. Those 2 factors right there are going to make them a competitive team by default. And I am taking the over here. Like I said, I think the only way that they get 8 wins or fewer is if Dak misses multiple games this season. Otherwise, give me the over for the Cowboys this year. Second in the division, Marcus, the Washington Commanders, like we've talked about already. Young team, talent on this roster. They're building it up again. Dan Quinn is here. The receiver situation is still odd, I feel like, because you've got scary Terry McLaurin, who's really good, but they could use more talent, more depth, more players to kind of spread the ball around to on offense. Can they repeat the performance that we saw last year, or are they destined to be fall back a little bit and be a worse team than we saw in 2024?
Well, the schedule's much harder, so that's not going to help. They're obviously hoping that Deebo Samuel can be that number 2 receiver, but I think from a short-term perspective, the moves they made this offseason are going to help them this year. Adding Deebo, trading for Laremy Tunsil, bringing back Zach Ertz, signing Javon Kinlaw. But I think from a long-term perspective, they did add a bunch of veterans, like older veterans that I think are kind of long in the tooth. And I wonder if that's the best strategy long-term. But again, for short-term, I think I don't think they're as good as they were last year, but I do think they probably get to about 10 wins.
Do you think that any of their moves this offseason were kind of like needle-moving moves? Like Tunsil had a crap ton of penalties last year. Deebo, is he washed at this point? Does he still have anything left?
I think the Tunsil move made a lot of sense, right? You get I think one of the best pass blocking left tackles in the league. I know he has a bunch of penalties. I do think that helps. Plus, Sam Cosmi, their right guard, he's coming off a major injury that he suffered in the playoff game. I think they just wanted to protect their investment at quarterback.
Mhm.
But no, I don't think Debo is going to do a ton for them. I mean, I think he's going to be a nice complementary player. But the Debo we saw like in 2021, who was like in the MVP conversation, he's just not there anymore.
Yeah, Marcus, I do not think the Commanders can repeat what they did last season. Not this year, at least, because when you look at the overall talent on the roster, I still think that they are a couple of years away. I would have them right at this projected win total, but worse than they were a season ago. This one I would kind of avoid because 9.5 is probably where I would have set that for the Commanders. I think that they could do better than that, but you talked about their schedule is going to be tougher this year because of where they finished last season. So Washington Commanders second in the NFC East in terms of projected wins at 9.5. And that brings us to the Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles, only at 11.5, though, Marcus. Is that because of the strength of schedule this year? And would you go over that, considering this the Eagles still might have the most talented team in the NFL?
So going over, you need to be 12-5 or better. I think they get there. I do. I think 12 wins is probably where they land. Now, that schedule they play is really tough. And if Dallas is improved, that'll hurt because last year they got to play against Cooper Rush twice. I just look at this Philadelphia team and like, show me the hole. Show me the one point, spot in the roster that has you nervous. And yes, you could say, well, injuries could hit, but you could say that for every team. They are loaded from a talent perspective. They're young at all the spots that you want to be young at. I think they get to 12, 13 wins. But they're going to slip up. They might lose a game to the Chiefs early in the year. Maybe they drop one of the divisional games in the first couple of weeks of the season. This should be still the favorite to win the Super Bowl this year by a lot.
Yeah, Marcus, I just keep thinking about this team and how well they do business over here. In 2024, they had glaring weaknesses at cornerback. They went out and drafted Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. Both were top 5 defensive rookie of the year candidates last season. They just don't have holes. And when you don't have holes, you've got excellent talent and you can just bully guys up front. Like, I don't see that any situation where they end up being a 500 team. Like, they're going to go well beyond that. Even at 11.5 wins, I would go over here because I think that they are the most talented team in the NFL still. I think they're probably going to end up being a 12 or 13 win team.
And we saw
right now.
We saw last year, like, they had injuries. Like, Jalen Hurts missed a couple games because of a concussion. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith both missed time at the same time last year, and they were able to survive. So if they have a little bit of injury luck go in their favor, maybe they do get to 13, 14 wins this year.
Yeah, and they've already been battle tested that way, like you pointed out. And so, yeah, definitely I would go the over here for the Eagles. They're just that good of a football team. Can they be one of those teams that repeats? Potentially. Let's move, Marcus, now to our final division here, and that is the NFC North, perhaps the most intriguing division overall, because we've had some significant changes here, and this division was already strong. Now the worst team just got stronger. They added Ben Johnson, a brilliant offensive mind for the Detroit Lions, who had some incredibly successful offenses over there. Can that continue? They've got a really young quarterback in Caleb Williams looking to take the next step. 8.5 wins is the projection for the Chicago Bears. That's the bottom of the division. And so you can see already we're starting here at 8.5. That's pretty high win total considering what this team was a season ago. Lots of roster turnover, but in a good way. They've got a really young roster overall. Do they exceed that, or because of how hard their division is, are they destined to go under the 8.5 win mark?
I think they go over, but only slightly over. Like, if I had to pick their win total, I think it's like 9 and 8 this year. We know about the offense. Like, the offense has a ton of talent, but it's also very young, right? Caleb Williams, second year. Colston Loveland, first round pick. Roma Dunze, second year. Luther Burden, second round pick from this year. It's just going to take a while for these offensive weapons to gel with Ben Johnson. The offensive line has a bunch of new pieces as well. So I wouldn't be surprised, Tommy, if they get off to a somewhat slow start, but they get better in the second half of the year. I think the defense is okay, but in this division and in this conference, you've got to be better than okay. I think 9 and 8 is where they land, and I think they're just outside the playoffs.
Yeah, I would agree. I would go over, but slightly as well. This is, to me, is one of the easiest projections when you look at a team from last year to this year and say, they will be an improved unit overall, especially offensively, because you're adding Ben Johnson and all the youth that you had there already. And Colston Loveland wasn't even there last year. All these guys are getting a year better. They've had that year under their belt now. Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze connection. Like, you're just going to be better offensively. Where do you think this team could finish in terms of their offense? Does Johnson make that big of a difference?
Yeah, I think they could be a top 7 or top 8 offense. I still think they have a ways to go before we get to see
Mhm.
that being a top 5 unit. I wanna see what the interior of this offensive line looks like. I wanna see how Roma Dunze fits into this group, but I'm very optimistic about Chicago, at least moving forward. We'll see if they make the postseason. We'll see how good that offense is this year, but very optimistic overall.
And Marcus, what are your thoughts on Caleb Williams overall so far, based on what we saw from him his first season? Are you a believer?
Yes. It's very hard to be in a worse situation last year with Matt Eberflus, a defensive-minded head
Yeah.
coach, Shane Waldron, who I thought was maybe the worst offensive coordinator in the league last year, and I thought Caleb showed a lot. I thought he was very resilient and played hard down the stretch. I am all in on Caleb Williams. I'll buy up any stocks that are available right now.
I was on the fence before, but like you said, the coaching has so much to do with this. Now that Ben Johnson is here, I will take all the Caleb Williams stock
Yep.
as well, because I've seen what this guy can do. And we knew that Caleb Williams was talented. There's a reason why many considered him the best quarterback prospect to come out in years as well. Marcus, let's move on to the next team here. And the Minnesota Vikings. This was a 14-win football team last year that sparked controversy, because how do you let a 14-win team not even host a playoff game? 9.5 wins, the projected win total, that would have them dropping significantly from where they were a season ago. Now they have a different quarterback at the helm. Some would argue that maybe J.J. McCarthy could be better than what Sam Darnold was, though statistically, Darnold, the 35 touchdown, 4,000 yard season, that was impressive to say the least. Are the Vikings going to take a step back this much? And Marcus, when you look at the offseason moves they've made, I like their roster talent a lot. I think that they've got a well-balanced roster. They've made some nice additions. Would you go over here?
No, I don't think I would. I think they end up right in that 9-win range. You've got JJ McCarthy, who missed the entire year with a knee injury. That generally has me concerned when you're starting a quarterback coming off a major injury. The schedule last year was pretty soft. This year, you play the AFC North and the NFC East, two of the best divisions, on top of playing maybe in the best division in football in the NFC North. I like the additions they made in free agency, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But we're talking about basically a rookie quarterback. Do I think McCarthy could eventually be better than Sam Darnold? I do. I have my doubts that it's going to happen in year 2, but really year 1 for him. I would go slightly under.
Marcus, I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I would actually go over the win total for the Vikings this year. And we've seen from Kirk Cousins straight into Sam Darnold, Cousins obviously fizzled out very quickly, and you could chalk that up to the Achilles. That's fine. During Atlanta, got benched last year. Kevin O'Connell, I am just so much a believer in this guy and what he runs there on offense. McCarthy did not play yet, but he did get to sit with a clipboard for a year and learn behind one of the best offensive minds in the business. I liked him as a talent coming in. And like you said, it might take some time before he can reach that elite level if he ever gets there. I still think that this is a 10, maybe 11 win football team. Strength of schedule and all. I like the roster talent. I'm a big believer in what they've gotten going on in the coaching staff. And so I would still go slightly above the 9.5 for
it's just Vikings. Their schedule is so relenting. Like they play, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, the Chargers, the Lions, the Ravens, the Packers, the Commanders, the Cowboys. Those are all the games right in a row. Like, it is just unrelenting. And if McCarthy slips up at all, or he gets into a little bit of that, rookie wall, because again, he's basically a rookie. He did nothing last year. I think this team is very well balanced from top to bottom. That's just a lot of pressure to put on a young quarterback who, frankly, just has not played a lot. Even back at his days in Michigan, like, he's never been asked to be a big-time contributor, and now he's going to have to be.
It's true, and McCarthy is such a wild card because we haven't seen him play yet. But this team, the Vikings were in a good division last year, and they still wound up with 14 wins. Now the schedule is going to be harder, but I just believe in that. And I could be wrong here. I would go slightly ahead of that. I think they're going to be a 10, maybe 11 win football team. But we will see. Let's go to now, Marcus, the Green Bay Packers at 10.5 wins, which this team is interesting because they're pretty young on offense. They kind of live and die by Jordan Love. Can he take the next step up there? We've seen the flashes of absolute brilliance from Jordan Love. Are they going to be good enough where can he take that next step forward? Can he jump into the elite tier of quarterbacks? He has the skill set to do it. But I think a lot of that hinges on what he does this year. And are you buying them as a team that can get above the 10-win mark this year?
No, I think they end up right around that 10-win mark. It's one of these things.
Yeah.
I think all these teams are so close together, and maybe one separates themselves from the pack, but I just see these guys all splitting the divisional games. And because the schedule is so tough, getting to 10-7 and making the postseason would be quite the accomplishment. And I think Green Bay does get there, but I don't think they're an 11-6 or 12-5 team. I think 10-7 is about the right number. Again, that's just a pretty well-balanced team, but they're also relying on a lot of young players in the passing game, including Matthew Golden, their first-round pick, Christian Watson, likely to miss most of the year coming off a torn ACL. Josh Jacobs is a running back with a lot of a lot of wear and tear on his body.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Packers team, but I don't love them.
Yeah, I think this one could go either way. I don't see them being a bad team. I think that their floor is 8 wins, probably. But I do think that they could go above the 10-win mark. That's where I would set the line as well, though. I think that you called it 10-7 team is the feel that I have going into the season, at least. And again, a lot of that hinges on Love. He has those tools. He can take that next step. If he does, now maybe he's got a number 1 receiver. We'll see. But it's going to be interesting there for sure. Let's finish up now, Marcus, with the team that a lot of folks felt like was the most talented roster in the NFL, maybe next to the Eagles last year, 14-win football team that ended up winning this division, and that was the Detroit Lions, 11.5 wins for Detroit. Now, they did lose Ben Johnson to a head coaching job. They lost Aaron Glenn to a head coaching job in New York Jets. Do you think are they going to take a significant step back now? This is a lot of coaching change that they've undergone this season. Are they going to be that team? We still know that they have talent on the roster.
Yeah, and as we're recording the show, a big news item just broke that Frank Ragnow, their all-pro center, just announced his retirement at age 29. So that's a big loss for PFF's number 2 ranked center from last year. Luckily, they added some interior offensive linemen in the draft this year. They'll be okay, but it's just a lot of losses in one offseason. And I think I almost think the loss of Aaron Glenn is just as big as Ben Johnson, because what Aaron Glenn was able to do in some of these big games down the stretch, despite losing, 10 defensive linemen to IR. You remember the game against Minnesota in week 18 where he just had Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold totally flustered. Losing both coordinators in the same offseason is brutal. We saw how that affected Philadelphia during the 2023 year after they went to the Super Bowl. They got blown out in round 1 of the playoffs. I think this Lions team, they made the playoffs. If I had to pick a division winner, I would still pick Detroit, but I'm going under that 11.5 win total.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I would pick Detroit as a division winner as well, but I think this division is going to be so tightly contested. Like it could really be a 3-way battle coming into like week 17 of the season. Week
just
18.
like it was last year, right? Like
it was. I know.
We didn't know the division winner until after week 18.
And this year could be just as close, albeit I don't think that you get the ceilings that you had last year. You're not going to get those 14-win teams. I think you're looking at a trio of teams maybe in the 11, 12-win range when it's all said and done. I do think that the Lions, man, I would still bet on the talent overall. I would go just above this. I think they're a 12-win football team. The Ragnow news is super surprising, I would say. He just turned 29 years old in May. He was a 2nd graded center in the NFL last year by Pro Football Focus with an 86th grade. That's interesting there. I still believe in the talent. Still believe in Dan Campbell. Let me go 12 wins on the Lions, and so I would go just above that win total. Marcus, anything that strikes you odd from any of these win totals that you've seen so far? Like, what is the biggest one that you think is off here? Is it the New Orleans Saints at 7.5?
Yes, that one's pretty striking, but just in general, the NFC is so incredibly deep. You look at the win totals now, look at how many teams are at least at that 8.5 win total. I think there's at like 10 or 11 teams that you could make an easy case could make the playoffs this year. We think that maybe 3 teams from the NFC North could do it, maybe 3 teams from the NFC East. And if the NFC South can even give us one viable team, whether that's Tampa Bay or Atlanta, I think that the NFC is going to be a blast to watch this year.
Yeah, it should be loads of fun. Very competitive conference overall, minus that NFC South. The rest of it is looking tough, and I think that it's going to make for some intriguing football, get some competitive races down the stretch this year. What do you think? Let us know your thoughts about these NFC win totals. We go live on the No Huddle show on Stacking the Box every Monday at 11:30 Eastern time. Come check us out, and thanks again for watching the No Huddle show.